Hello, welcome to a very special program of Cotton, and today our guest is Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, who is a very eminent historian, and presently he is also the Chancellor of Ashoka University. Now I welcome you to our show, and I have a list of questions, but then before I go to the questions, I just want to ask you an example question, that is, in his autobiography, Nietzsche, in his Ecce Homo, he said, "How am I so wise?" Now I want to ask you, how could you speak so well today? In today's lecture, everybody was so attentive, spellbound, everybody was listening to you, and the way you were presenting the things. So conceptually as well as from the point of view of presentation, how could you do it?
The honest answer, I don't know. Some days it happens, it's just everything clicks together, falls into place, the right parts of the memory work. So I can't offer you an explanation or an answer to the question. I'm just pleased that all of you liked it.
Yes, we liked it very much. And indeed, actually, this is not the first time it's happening, because you had come here earlier also in 3 occasions. Today is the 4th occasion. And every time we listened to you, we heard you, you were so succinct, you are so to the point, and the way you speak, so everybody was today very pleased.
The only explanation I can give is just years of teaching.
And also
because when you go into class, you're very conscious that you have to present something very lucidly and succinctly to you, so that your students understand what you're trying to say. So I've been teaching for such a long time. I suppose that influences also my public speaking.
Maybe. And now when you teach in Ashoka University, you are professor of history there. So when you go to teach, do you prepare for your lectures?
Absolutely.
You prepare.
Yes.
Even now you prepare.
Yes.
So without preparation you would not take a class.
When I first became a teacher, when I first got my first job in Calcutta University, I went to my teacher, Ashin Das Gupta. So I said, "Sir, I've got this job. This will be my first time in a classroom. I'm going to teach. So any advice?" So the only one piece of advice he gave me, he said, "Never go into class without preparation," and I follow that.
Actually, that's a very important lesson. Not only actually going to a class, I think for everything. Yes. Without preparation, one shouldn't do anything.
Even today, since you brought up today's lecture, in my mind, I had gone through a preparation.
Yes.
Maybe I didn't have a script or something like that, but in my mind, I had thought it through.
Yeah. Though you wrote a book on it, but still you.
No, but what to take out of the book for a 35 minute presentation.
That's great.
And also speaking and writing are two different arts.
Yes. But I think you handle both the arts very excellently and very aptly, because I have been reading whenever I get a chance, I read whatever you write. And I have seen your writing also. It's very logical, to the point. And the language also, it flows so nicely.
Thank you.
Now, coming to the first question I have here. Now, you had your education in, that means school education in Kolkata Boys, and then you went to Presidency College and JNU. And then you had your PhD from Oxford University, and then you taught in some of the best academic institutions in India and also abroad. And present, earlier you were the Vice Chancellor of Ashoka University, and now you are the Chancellor. Now, in this 4 decades, almost 4 decades?
More than that.
More than 4 decades. More than 4 decades of reading, writing, and teaching. After that, how do you see the state of education in India now, and particularly the state of higher education?
Well, I have a very pessimistic view of the state of education in India. And before I come to higher education, I think the state of primary education, which is the basis for the future of the country, is absolutely dismal. Higher education, at least there are a handful, but at least there are a handful of centers of excellence. Not centers of excellence in the way the government defines it, but centers of excellence in the sense that these are institutions that are pursuing excellence in their research, in their teaching, in their writing, and so on. There are a few, not many, but there are a few in the sphere of higher education. But in primary education, I mean, the situation is really dismal. You know, Paresh, I seriously think that not just our country, most countries across the world, where more money is spent on defense and armaments than on education, it says something about the world in which we live.
So that itself is actually an index that money is spent on defense budget and the education budget. But that's okay, that's so far that is the money part is concerned. But what about the other parameters?
No, it is not just about money, it is about an attitude towards education. That is the more important part. Money is the reflection of an attitude.
So they spend more money in defense, in armaments, than in educating people. So that's an overall, actually, that's an overall statement on the state of education in India. So if we come to higher education, what do you think?
Well, much of higher education is what I call transactional, in the sense that you are teaching students how to get jobs, not how to open up their minds, how to think critically, how to develop one's intellect, one's reasoning powers. So this is an assembly line.
And that is why perhaps we had first, before you started Ashoka University, there was a small speech by you on the objective of higher education, where you define higher education that it's the beauty of knowledge, why you need to know.
It's opening up the doors and windows of the mind.
And this opening of the doors and windows of the mind, it's actually not only in higher education, it should start from the primary level.
Primary. So develop the curiosity in a child.
Now I'll leave this question, the follow-up question, but then I will have a last question. Why do you think the situation is so?
I don't know why. I think we've got our priorities wrong. That's all that I can say. There was a time when, faced with certain compulsions, Jawaharlal Nehru created certain institutions of excellence, the IITs, the 2 IIMs, the compulsion was, of course, that India would have to produce her own cadre of managers and own cadre of technocrats. But, that vision we lost somewhere. And also Nehru's, to offer a slight note of criticism, that effort of Nehru, that vision of Nehru also diverted attention and funds too much towards higher education than on primary education.
Okay, and this objective actually in 2019 9 they passed an act that education, right to education, and when I probed it little bit, then I found that okay, these were the objectives of our freedom movement, free education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not that then we took from 1947 to 2009, so such a long time, and now of course, as you said, that it has gone all haywire. Okay, now
I also think that, just to round off this part of the discussion, I think there is too much government control on education.
Too much government control on education. But then it is that that's one way. But then, if I have to say that okay, that government's priorities, health and education should be their priorities.
Priorities, absolutely. But you don't just the government follows the policy. He who pays the piper calls the tune. Provide the money, build the institutions. Let the institutions run by themselves.
Autonomy.
Yeah. You don't have to control every single bit of the institution.
Now there is a total control of the institution.
Total
control of the institution.
And this is not something new. This is happening for a long time.
But
Mrs.
now
Indira Gandhi started.
Yes, and now it has gone to beyond
uncontrollable
situation. Okay. Now I come to my second question. Now India is land of Gandhi, India is land of Tagore, and we also had a very strong tradition of Bhakti movement. And that was a Bhakti movement was a pan-Indian phenomenon. So everywhere, like in Bengal, there was then there in Punjab.
Absolutely.
This Sikh Nanak, and in Assam, Shankardev, everywhere. But now, and the other day I was reading a book by Rajmohan Gandhi, that was Darbar. This is on a prince of Gujarat. So I saw even in Gujarat at that time, say 100 years before, but it was actually for building bridges among people, and then mutual understanding between different communities, all these things. But in this country now, how could this communalism, why has communalism triumphed now? In this country of Gandhi, in this country of Tagore, and also with a strong tradition of Bhakti movement.
You are absolutely right. I mean, that the Bhakti movement was pan-Indian. And then, of course, we had remarkable individuals like Gandhi, Tagore, just to name two. But there were others.
There are many.
There were many others. I think the rise of communalism is large to do with politicians and the kind of politics that politicians engage in. And this begins with the British policy of divide and rule. And then it is carried on in independent India in the most bizarre way, where certain leaders play vote bank politics, and therefore they play off one community against another community, and that is what has enhanced and really increased communal tensions and communal friction within Indian society. I still like to believe that common people, if they are left on their own to carry out their day-to-day existence, they will live peacefully and coexist peacefully and carry out their religious worships and beliefs without interfering with each other. But this space is disappearing because of political activities, political interventions. And also, it is not just Indian politics and Indian politicians. I mean, it's become a global phenomenon. You know?
Now, this communalism, the root of communalism in India, can we pinpoint it to 1905, that Bengal, partition of Bengal?
I'll take it back a little further. I will pinpoint it to the, last two decades of the 19th century, when the British actually start implementing this divide and rule policy. So the pivotal moment is, I think, the rebellion of 1857, in the aftermath of which the British realized that if this was a rebellion where Hindus and Muslims fought together. So if you allow them to remain together and fight together, then our dominance, our rule in India is in danger. So break them up.
So that means it's a very interesting thing, because I was reading a book by Surendranath Banerjee. He's making
Nation in the
Making. So that is why I was saying this. But then you have pointed out something very interesting, because the bond between the Hindus and the Muslim, when Britishers, they saw the bonding between the Hindus and Muslim, that is where they tried to divide us. That means our unity. They are threatened by our unity, and they actually tried to divide us on religious line.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the present rulers, they are also doing it.
But other politicians of other hues than the saffron hue have also practiced similar kind of divisive tactics. Think of Mrs. Gandhi and the Sikhs.
Yes, that's true. Because if I could say that this rise.
What was Shah Banu about?
Yes, that is not the whole thing. I think the whole thing started with emergency. This rise of saffronization. It started with two things. One is that emergency, another is the unlocking of the Babri Masjid. And that was actually preceded by Shah Banu case. So now we need to understand these things. We need to go back to history if we have to build up
a counter narrative.
Counter narrative. So
and also people who are fighting or claiming to fight the present dispensation politically, they must admit that our party also made mistakes.
That's of course, and that they have to admit.
You can't go on fighting or claiming to fight, as I say, communalism, and deny that the Congress had a role in the killing of the Sikhs in 1984.
So one has to admit their mistakes.
Yes,
their past mistakes, and then you have to correct course. Now, but then what you said, the positive note I find in your answer is that left to themselves, the common people,
Yes.
they are actually they will be busy with their own issues of their life, and they will not be engaged in this.
Not
we have
just busy, they will respect the other people's
Now we have seen that happening in particularly in Assam. You know what kind of the atmosphere.
Not just in Assam, Paresh. In any crisis, when there is a violent sectarian outbreak, you will see how many hands are extended to protect the victims or potential victims.
Yes,
we only look at who is being killed, who is being attacked. We seldom look at who is being saved and who are saving them.
Yes, that's very important, because
in 1984, people were actually saved. In 1990s, in the Bombay riots, people put themselves at danger to save minorities.
Yeah. No, that is actually
that is the index, that there is a sense of humanity, a sense of compassion, a sense of we are the same people.
And I think finally that's the solace, that the people, in general people, the common people, they are actually not communal. Only they are these politicians, the vested interest, they manipulate and spread this thing. Okay, now I come to the third question. That's your book. I read Nehru and Bose. I read that book, and there was you showed in that book that actually there's no rivalry between them. Rather, their relationship was a relationship of great camaraderie. Similarly, we also see that a narrative is being put, a narrative is being presented nowadays, and not nowadays, for quite few years, that there's just great differences between Nehru and Patel, and their relationship was not very cordial. So what do you say on this?
So that their relationship was not cordial is just factually incorrect. Okay. That they had differences, of course they had differences, but they also had the ability to work together. First, work together to take India towards independence and then gain independence. And then in the first 3 years of independent India, Patel unfortunately died in 1950. So for the first 3 years, actually to work together to build the new republic. So I don't think that the differences overwhelmed them or their relationship or created acrimony between the two of them. They were mature individuals who recognized that they had differences amongst themselves, and but they also realized and they chose to work together in spite of their differences.
So differences, you said that
there was also the other thing which I tried to show in the Bose-Nehru book, which is again falsely portrayed. There was just as there was no rivalry between Nehru and Bose, there was no rivalry between Patel and Nehru. There were differences, but differences are not always based on rivalries.
And people can always have different views on.
So that Nehru would be the leader, the prime minister, whatever you want to call it, of independent India, had been decided long time before 1947, and Patel had accepted that decision. So there was no rivalry involved.
And there
But
is
certainly there was ideological differences.
But then there was a cordial relation
Cordial.
between both of them. Differences apart.
Yeah, different.
And then this is my last question. This is the introduction is a little longer, but still in an article titled "The Breakup of Britain," published in the New Left Review, Eric Hobson said, "Marxist movements and states have tended to become national, not only in form but in substance. I mean nationalist. There is nothing to suggest that this trend will not continue." Unquote. Similarly, Benedict Anderson in his book Imagine Community said, "The reality is quite plain. The end of the era of nationalism, so long professed, is not remotely in sight. Indeed, nationness is the most universally legitimate value in the political life of our time." But Tagore was very critical of nationalism, particularly the Japanese and Western brands of nationalism. He discussed this in great detail in his book Nationalism. However, with the Swadeshi movement, Gandhi was definitely a nationalist. I would like to know your views on nationalism.
So, Tagore saw nationalism, particularly as you said, Japanese and Western nationalism, as being very aggressive and domineering, and because it was domineering and aggressive, it was also a coercive force, and this is what made Tagore into a political recluse after the Swadeshi period, after 1907, 1908. For Tagore, I think that there was something even more important and more fundamental than nationalism, and that is humanism, humanity. And this is where he could not accept the aggressive dimensions of nationalism. I don't think Tagore ever denied that you needed a movement to overthrow British rule, and that such a movement would have nationalist aspirations. But if it was only limited to nationalist aspirations, then that movement would be very limited, and it would not in any way aspire to what Tagore believed to be Swaraj. And such nationalism, if it was just remained nationalism, would also be very constrictive and restrictive and would not have any space for humanism. You know, I think Tagore would have agreed with E.M. Foster when E.M. Foster said that if I have to make a choice between my country and my friend, I hope I'll have the courage to choose my friend. So I think not literally, but in the spirit of it, that is what Tagore wanted to believe. And you know, this comes out in the end of the concluding sections of his novel Gora. It comes out
Gora.
And it comes out, of course, in the sections on Nikhilesh in Home and the World. And it also comes out in a novel that people don't talk about when they discuss Tagore's attitude to nationalism, a novel called Charodhyay, 4 chapters, where Tagore is drawing out the coercive and the violent elements of nationalism and how corrosive they are to the human being and the human character. So, if you ask my views on nationalism, they are more in tune with Tagore. I see myself learning increasingly from Tagore's writings about humanity, about aspiring to be a better human being than just to be a nationalist. Thinking about humanity as a whole and not just my own country.
But now, in that context, so an exclusive nationalism and an inclusive nationalism, in that sense, Gandhi was a nationalist, but then he never said anything against any community, any nation.
When you say Gandhi was a nationalist, I think you are somewhat diminishing him. It is not. What is the highest virtue that Gandhi held? It was ahimsa.
Yeah.
Not Jatiyatavad or nationalism. So when there was a clash between nationalism and ahimsa, Gandhi stood for ahimsa. Take Chauri Chaura.
Yeah. No. Here, I just want to. Maybe I have not been able to clearly state it or clarify myself properly. Now, Gandhi nationalism is not only a political nationalism. Nationalism, if I understand, it's not only political nationalism. Nationalism also goes with the ethos of a particular place. It has a deep connection with culture. So in that sense, when Gandhi was saying about Swadeshi, when Gandhi was particularly in Gandhi Reader, in Penguin Gandhi Reader, when you were talking about the essence of Gandhi's say thoughts and philosophy, Hind Swaraj. So Hind Swaraj, if we see that, don't we see a nationalist not from the political prism, nationalist from the rootedness of a particular, his rootedness to India. So is not there a finer difference between this political nationalism and what I'm trying to
That's why I
say.
use the phrase aggressive nationalism. Yes, Gandhi believed that he was rooted in a particular kind of tradition, and that tradition itself was an Indian tradition. And he also believed, if you see the Hind Swaraj very carefully, that tradition, that civilization was superior to what was being called Western civilization.
Western civilization, yeah.
Superior and more enduring than Western civilization.
Yeah. But here actually his fight
you
was,
are right. There he is not talking just about politics. He's talking about culture. He's talking about ways of living. He's talking about forms of piety.
Because here actually, when he was actually speaking against West, he was speaking philosophically. This mechanical, the industrial civilization.
Basically, when he's talking about the West, he's talking about industrialization and the industrial society. He equates these two terms.
Yes. So I think you delivered an excellent lecture in this evening, and then after that also we had this discussion, and I hope our viewers will get some thoughts here in our discussion, whatever issues we discuss, and it's a very short discussion, but then still we covered a number of issues here. And even after a days, you see, you traveled in the morning from Kolkata and then delivered this lecture, and still you could spare this much time. So from our side, from Northeast Now, I thank you for sparing time and to be with us for this interview. And with these words, I thank you. I thank our viewers.
I thank you, Paresh. It's always lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, bye.